Good evening. It is Tuesday the 19th of September. It's about 8 o'clock in the evening now. I'm podcasting today at this hour. I think this is actually the first time since the first video that I've actually podcast midweek, and certainly this late in the day. There are good reasons why I'm recording so late. I've been to work this morning and finished at 2 o'clock thereabouts. But since I came home, I have been baking. I've made some what I call breakfast muffins, which are strawberry and rolled oats muffins. They're delicious. I'm not making them sound as wonderful as they are. They really are delicious. Lots of butter, only a little sugar in them, but wholemeal flour and rolled oats mean that it's quite a healthy breakfast muffin. And I've been hulling and halving strawberries. I mean, I'm sure tomatoes would be delicious, but they've got strawberries in them. And I've also been making, and Rachel, there's no point in you complaining to me about this. You decided to go and work for Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. So it's your own fault that you're not there tomorrow, because I've made my very special peanut butter cookies. And they are just so delicious. It's going to be a real strain keeping them and actually taking them into work. And the reason I've made these is because tomorrow is my birthday. And our tradition at work is to bring in biscuits and cakes. Most people buy them, but I like to make my own. And I usually get requests on what to make. And the peanut butter cookies usually feature very high in that list of requests. So I will be taking those into work tomorrow for my colleagues and friends. And there's been a lot going on in the last week or so since I last podcast properly. Those of you who've seen the brief video I shot on Thursday will know some of what's happened. So last week on Tuesday, my youngest sister, Lucy, gave birth to her baby, little baby girl, who was just under 7 pounds, and her name is Amber Lacey. And she is adorable, as you'd expect. Who doesn't love a newborn baby? It's quite funny. I was up at the weekend, and I'll talk about my weekend away as part of this podcast. But we went up. I was up in Salford on Thursday afternoon. I arrived early evening, and on the Saturday I took my mother and my brother to Oldham, which is on the other side of the city. On the other side of Manchester from Salford, which is where Lucy lives with her family. And I was able to hold Amber and get a photograph of my mother holding Amber, which at that point in time was significant because my mother is my eldest living relative and Amber was, at that stage, my youngest living relative. And I was able to feed Amber as well, give her a bottle, which was, it's always lovely. I don't have children of my own, but coming from a large family, and certainly when I was younger and Lucy was a baby, and then Ruth and Rebecca, my two older nieces, were babies. They lived in the next street. My sister and her husband lived in the next street with Ruth and Rebecca, and I used to babysit and I used to bath them and feed them and all the things that you like doing with babies and young children. So I've always had an affinity with babies. They always seem to relax when I hold them, which is quite nice. And I mean, who doesn't love holding a tiny little baby? And she's so tiny, but so sweet. The funniest thing about her, though, is that when she cries, she squeals like a mandrake. Now, those of you who know Harry Potter will know exactly what I mean, but the mandrake is the root of a plant. And when it's repotted into a larger pot, it screams as it's taken out of the soil. And so you have to wear ear defenders because otherwise you can't tolerate the screams. And I think it has some effect on making you unconscious or something like that. I can't remember the detail, but it's in the movies of the books, the mandrake has a very, very shrill squeal. And Amber cries just like that. She didn't cry very much, but she was obviously, when she'd woken up, she was hungry, and as a newborn baby does, lets you know that they're hungry. And she was crying, and it was incredible. Anyway, so maybe we should call her Mandrake rather than Amber. So, Amber was born Tuesday the 12th. Fast forward now to Tuesday the 19th, which is my mother's 79th birthday. My eldest niece Ruth, he's also expecting a baby. Both of these babies were due at the end of September into early October. Ruth today, this morning at 1 a.m, gave birth to her second little boy, Alfie Zachary. And so the 19th of September is now the birthday of the oldest member of my family and the youngest member of my family, which is that there's a sense of completion, of life coming full circle there. So it's a very special day today. And then tomorrow is my 49th birthday. I was my mother's 30th birthday present, whether she liked it or not. But at least I had the good grace to wait until the following morning. So, you know, I'm ever the gentleman, even when I was being born. So we're very happy. Alfie is about 7.5 pounds. Actually, more I think actually 7 pounds 14 ounces. So very nearly 8 pounds. So a good healthy weight, and mother and baby are at home, as are Lucy and Amber. And Jake, my eldest great nephew, was able to hold his baby brother, and there's a lovely photograph that Ruth took of Jake and Alfie together, and it's every bit as adorable a picture you could ever hope to see. Jake will be 13 in November. So there's a bit of a gap between the two babies. I think Ruth thought that she wasn't going to be having any more babies, but there we are. Life has a habit of tripping you up when you least expect it. So, but she couldn't be happier. And I was able to give the bits and pieces that I and Wendy have made for both Amber and Alfie. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to going up in the next month or so to see Alfie and to see Amber again, and it's been a good day. So in honour of the day, I decided that although my birthday isn't until tomorrow, I would follow the laudable tradition in the UK that birthdays actually begin at midday the day before your birthday. It's to do with complicated inheritance laws, but basically, if you have a trust fund, you come of age at midday the day before your birthday. So I'm drinking a very nice red wine. Just the one glass tonight, and I'll have some more tomorrow. And this is a birthday present, and it is Camarone. And I'm sorry, I haven't got my glasses on, and it's red against grey, which is purplish grey, which is never a good idea. So I'll just show you the bottle, and you can make your own mind up as to what it is. But it's from Puglia in Italy, so it's an Italian red, and it's delicious, very fruity, actually quite easy drinking, which is potentially very dangerous. So I'd just like to say congratulations to my sister and my niece, and happy birthday to my mother, and ad multus annos to all three. Ad multus annos is the song that we that the monks sing in the monastery, which is a Latin song, ad multos annos vivat. So for many years, live for many years, plurimusque annos vivat, and for many more years live, and then ad multus annos plurimusque annos vivat, 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 live, and then you have a drink on monks' feast days. So in my case, my monastic name was Boniface, and so on the 5th of June would be my patronal feast. And St. Boniface is quite a patron saint of Germany, of course, although he was an Englishman, and a very significant figure in the early medieval world, and in many ways responsible for the spread of St. Benedict's rule and monks following that rule, because he used it as the foundation document for the communities that he set up when he went into mission lands into the Germanic pagan areas of Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. Anyway, so I guess now would be a good time for me to introduce myself. So my name is Gerard. That's my baptismal name. Peter, which is my second baptismal name and is also the name by which I'm known in Oxford. Or Boniface, which is my monastic name, and there are still quite a few people who know me as Brother Boniface. I am a crocheter and knitter, a weaver, soon-to-be spinner, and a sewer and a quilter. I live in Abingdon-on-Thames, which is a market town 7 miles to the south of Oxford in the south of England in the United Kingdom. I live with my 2 cats, Toby, whom you can see here, who wants me to tickle him and stroke him, and Bunty, who's sitting in front of me wondering why I'm sitting here talking to myself. I also have a flatmate, Andy, who is he's working late this week, so he's out at work driving a coach to London. We work for the same company. And he has 2 little boys, Thomas and Samuel, who are 8 and 6 years old, who often come and stay. So it can be a nice, busy, full house from time to time. So I was up in Salford, which is my hometown, where I was born and where I grew up until I was just shy of my 22nd birthday when I joined the monastery. And I hadn't actually been able to go up last year at Christmas time because I'd been ill, as I've mentioned in previous videos, which is how I got into knitting and crochet in the first place. And so I hadn't been able to get my Christmas presents. Well, I don't have many, obviously. I'm a man in my late 40s now, soon to be 49, in fact. And I got some books and some bits and pieces, but the most delicious thing I got was this Thornton's Father Christmas, or Santa. I'm not sure what it calls it. So Jolly Santa, which is a chocolate Father Christmas in white milk and dark chocolate. Fortunately, best before the 31st of October, there is absolutely zero chance that this Jolly Santa is going to make it until the 31st of October. It will be pushing it if it were to make it to the 1st of October. So I shall enjoy my Christmas present and breaking into it and eating my Jolly Santa. But I just thought, it's never too early to start thinking about next Christmas, I guess, but this is last Christmas, so I shall enjoy eating that. Hello Toby. I haven't completed anything since last week. I have a work in progress, which you've already seen. Excuse me, Toby, you're going to have to go. Oops, sorry about that. Yes, I'm afraid Toby does like to get in the way, rather, when I'm trying to podcast. I have previously shown this half of the work in progress, which is the Mermaid's Tale I'm making for my 9-year-old, soon-to-be 10-year-old great niece, Charlotte. Charlotte loves pink and she loves mermaids, so this, I'd already completed the first half a couple of weeks ago, and I bought the elastic to go in the waistband. But while I was at home, I cast on the second half and have been able to get quite a lot done. I'm probably 15 rows away from beginning the decrease to start the shaping of the tail, and it fits. She doesn't know what it is, but I was able to ascertain that it is actually long enough, which is good. I have the yarn in my Mrs. Brown's bag, which is my birthday present to myself, and it's just such a lovely bag. It's so well made, but I love the fabric, I love the feel of the fabric, and I love the look of the cabling. In fact, my friend Wendy is making a jumper, I think, might be a cardigan, with a very similar cable to this one, although they're actually side by side, so it's if you like 6 legs of the cable rather than 3, which weaves from side to side within the cabling, and it looks wonderful. So I'm really pleased with this bag. When I got this, I cast this on and was able to do little bits and pieces. Obviously, we had other things on, so Sunday we were at church and then had the family back to the house, and so we got a little buffet party kind of prepared and set out, so that took most of Sunday and a lot of Saturday as well to prepare. And we went to my sister's house, which is, we were there a couple of hours, and it's a 45-minute drive from my mother's house. So Saturday was gone. So I really only had bits and pieces of time. So I probably had less time, even though my mother doesn't really like going out very much. She does go out, but she gets very tired very quickly. So we only take her out for short periods unless we're going to somebody's house, family member's house. And even then she does get very cranky if she gets tired. She gets, the Alzheimer's is peculiar in that she's very at peace much of the time, but then when things are different or odd, she gets very disoriented and then gets very upset because she's disoriented, and can get quite angry and frustrated with herself and with the situation. So we just have to be careful to not allow that kind of situation to arise too often, because, you know, it's a horrible thing that she's living with. And we want to make her life as comfortable and as peaceful as we can. And my brother is doing a great job in the care that he is providing for her, and enabling her to live a very full life within the limits of her disease. Anyway, so I got the green ring out, and of course I didn't have any knitting on it at the time. And my brother said, "Oh, what's that?" And my mother immediately said, "It's a knitting loom." And he said, "Well, how does that work?" And she did all the action. She said, "Well, you wrap the wool around each of the pegs, and then you lift the bottom bit over the top bit." And it was really nice. It was just a really nice moment. I asked her if she wanted to have a go, and she said, "No, I can't concentrate. I don't want to." So I didn't press that. But it was just a really nice moment where just that little vignette of the person that she once was came through so strongly, that she knew what it was, she was interested in it, and she did. When I was working on it, it was quite, I think she found it quite therapeutic, because she watched me as I worked each row, and she would ask me 6, 7, 8, 9 times what it was I was making and who it was I was making it for, and sometimes she'd say, "Oh yes, you said," but most of the time she didn't remember that she'd asked, and that was fine. You know, there's no point in getting worked up about it. There's no point in getting annoyed or angry. It's not her fault. It's not the world's fault. It's just the way it is, and you have to be reconciled to the situation. You just have to accept this is the way things are. It's not what we want. It's not what she wants. It's just the way things are. And as I say, my brother does a fantastic job, because he he doesn't let her take things seriously. He laughs and jokes about things. He laughs and jokes about the fact that she forgets things. And she sometimes gets that joke and she sometimes doesn't, but he laughs in such an infectious way that she laughs anyway. So it's quite a positive atmosphere. And it's important as well, I think, with a person with Alzheimer's. It's very easy, because it's an infantilizing condition, it makes them almost as helpless as infants. It's very easy to fall into the trap of actually treating the person as an infant. And that can grate, and rightly, and can feel demeaning. And there are times when you can't give a detailed and full explanation, because that's not what the situation calls for. But there are other occasions when there's a degree of lucidity, when you can actually talk adult to adult and just say, this is the situation, this is why you keep forgetting things, this is why we do what we do. And there'll be a tacit acknowledgement of that, and then you'll move on. And of course, sadly, that conversation will simply never implant itself. It will simply be lost. But it's, I think, vital in the strict sense of the word to retain the sense of the person that the patient was, because the person who they were is the reason why you want to care for them now, effectively, certainly as a family member. My mother was a very nurturing woman, her life was focused on family. And I guess because I'm talking about my visit north, and that's my work in progress. I guess this episode is going to be much more self-reflexive than other episodes, and I hope you bear with me and that it doesn't put you off. But if it does, then that's fine. Next week normal service will be resumed. But part of the reason why I went north this weekend was actually my father's anniversary of death, which it was 25 years ago last Tuesday. Last Thursday. And my brother had organised with our local parish priest for a celebration mass of remembrance, and had invited members of the family, immediate family, so brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, and so on and so forth, but also aunts and uncles, cousins, aunts and uncles-in-law as well. And it was an extremely good turnout. There were probably 40 or 50 members of the family present, which was a really nice gesture of solidarity on the one hand, and an acknowledgement of the kind of man that my father was, but also it's an opportunity which become fewer as we get older. We become more, as we have our own families and they're growing, we have less time with the family that we would have spent more time with when we were younger, because, well, just the way it goes, I guess. People move away, and the family celebration occasions, weddings and the like, are fewer in your generation, because it's now the next generation and they're all having their celebrations. And everybody came back to the house, and we had a good 4 or 5 hours of family just laughing, joking. My brother played some home videos which included my father, so he was present in the room, as it were, and they were really sweet videos of all of us when we were younger, and including Lucy, Ruth and Rebecca, who are now mothers themselves, and so it was quite sweet to see them as 3, 4 and 5-year-olds running around on the beach. And it was very much, and I said this to my brother afterwards, it was very much the kind of celebration my father would have wanted. My mother and father, because of the war, the Second World War, were both raised in non-standard families. My mother was raised by her grandmother. My father's father was killed during the war, and my father never actually met his father. He was only 2 years old when my grandfather died. And I think even though his mother married again and he had a sister and he loved his step-granddad and he loved his sister, I think he always felt keenly the loss of family. And I remember that the night he died at home, we nursed him at home, and I stayed up with him the night before he died. And a lot of the time he was sleeping or was in pain because we were administering morphine. But there were occasions of real lucidity, and we sat and talked a lot of the night because he couldn't sleep very much. And he said a few things to me which have always stuck with me, one of which was that he knew as soon as he saw my mother for the first time that he wanted to marry her and to have a big family with her. And that was exactly what my mother wanted as well. I mean, I don't think she's never said quite the same. She's always said that there would be nobody who would ever treat her the way my father treated her. That he was a very special man in her life, and she could never have replaced him, which is one of the reasons why even though she was only in her she would have been 53 when my father died, or 52, just coming up to her birthday. She never entertained the idea of meeting another man and looking for happiness a second time. And the two things that meant everything to my father were his faith and his family. And in that order, which is the right order, that he had a strong family because he had a strong faith. It was, he was a very pious and devout man without being... When you hear the words pious and devout, it conjures up the Uriah Heep kind of creepy obsequiousness devotion, and that's not the kind of devotional piety that my father had. It was a very real, embedded piety. His faith guided his actions. He was very active in the local community. Both my parents were. I've mentioned the last time when I showed Sammy the seal that my parents were the founders and the instigators of our local residents action, community action body, association, that's the word. And that ran for several years and organised parties and social events and trips to the seaside for children, many of whom never actually ever went away from the city other than on these trips or with school. And he was heavily involved in the local parish. He was chairman of the St Vincent de Paul Society, which is dedicated to working for and with the poorest and most vulnerable members of the parish community. He was active in CAFOD, which is one of my charities as well, which is the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development. He encouraged us to be involved in church groups and social action groups, and he was a scout leader, a cub leader in fact, and very much encouraged his sons to be scouts, which we all were. So all in all, my parents were very active in their community and very active in their family, and the two intermeshed, and it was a real living faith. It wasn't a theoretical belief system. It was it was a driving force. It motivated him in everything he did. And I will move on from this subject very shortly, but I just wanted to say that in the strictest sense, he followed, we are called as Christians, when those of us who are Christians are called to follow Christ. And that's what the name means, Christ-like. And one of the most significant things that means is to follow Christ through death to resurrection. And I think as a modern society, we're sometimes a little bit, we find the idea of death a morbid subject and we quickly shy away from it. But actually, it doesn't have to be. You know, Sunday was a great celebration of life and new life as well as life departed. And I think, you know, there are lessons that we all can learn from that. There was a great medieval devotion called Memento Mori, and you'll see it in lots of Renaissance paintings, that great scholars would have a skull, not necessarily a real skull, but a skull on their desk, a constant reminder that tomorrow they may not be alive, that they are to live today the way that they, for the best, the way that would achieve the most, the way that would be a true reflection of the person they want to be. And there's another ancient tradition when popes were crowned, even they're not crowned anymore, but just after the triple tiara was placed on the Pope's head, a cardinal would stand next to him and set light to a piece of paper and say, "Sit transit gloria mundi," so passes the glory of the world, that it's brief and fleeting and that your focus should be on the things that really matter, not the transient pleasures and excitements of life, but the things that really matter. And for my father, that was faith, and that was his family. And so when my brother organised a mass and a wake, if you like, as a party afterwards, those were the two things that would absolutely have meant everything to my father, because that's exactly how he would have organised a similar event himself. So, far from being gloomy, far from being sad, it was a joy-filled occasion. Yes, sad at the passing of someone dear to us, sad at the fact that 25 years have passed, but also happy in the knowledge that his legacy lives on in each of the people who was there, not just his own children, but in the way in which he was remembered as a positive influence in people's lives. So thank you for bearing with me on that. It was just a lot happened this week. Great things have happened, and in the middle of that is this stark reality of life. So that you know, the life cycle is there. As I say, today we celebrate my oldest living relative's birthday and my youngest living relative's day of birth. So that's a great celebration as well. So thank you for bearing with me. I do have presents. Yes, presents. I think I will start with Gloria. Sorry, Sit Transit Gloria Mundi. Claudia has been a great positive experience in my life. There's Crochet Luna, and she sent me the most wonderful birthday gift. And I think I'm not going to go into everything that's in here because I don't want it to be. But there's this lovely, delightful Karen cupcake. I had seen these on the web. This pom-pom is so firm and so wonderful. And within the band there is a pattern for a bobble hat. In fact, there you can see the bobble hat. But these colours are just so me. Claudia, I cannot thank you enough. This was such a wonderful thing to receive. And I don't know if you were aware, I can't even remember if I'd mentioned it, but I was going to knit myself a hat now that I'm working out in the yard in the winter. And so I will be casting this on. I will be making my hat, and I will think of you every time I wear it, and out in the cold and dark in the middle of December and January when it's shiveringly cold at 6:30 in the morning, walking around at the yard, getting CCTV from our buses and making sure everything is working properly. So I just wanted to share that in particular because that's really going to be something I look forward to using. There are other things in there, and I will message you, Claudia, privately as well, just to thank you for that and to talk about things. I got, what else did I get? Friend at work has knows I like to crochet and knit, and has bought me some. There are maybe a dozen of these. This is called Serdar Fancy That, which seems as good a name as any for. It is yarn, but it's got this frilly edge on it as well. So I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to make with it. Any suggestions gratefully received. It is 100%. Well, it's not 100% acrylic. It's 100% artificial fibres. But incredibly, I mean, these filaments are so soft. It's really nice to touch. Actually, it's almost like chenille. I mean, it's not chenille, obviously, but it has that gliding sensation as you stroke it. I've got 4 different colours of this, so I'm very grateful to him for that, and also some rather odd, more odd yarn, which is this Fizz by Serdar, which is also 100% artificial fibres, and it's yarn that has these little strands wrapped around in alternating black and white. Again, absolutely no idea what I'm going to make with that. Open to any suggestions, please keep them clean. As if I watched The Grocery Girls. I think actually putting in that caveat is not necessarily a bad idea. But yeah, I've absolutely no idea, but I'm very grateful to him anyway. I bought myself some Bernat blanket. This is the, what's the name of the colourway? Sailor's Delight, I think it is. Oh, it might actually say there. Yes, Sailor's Delight. It's the right way around that way. These are 300-gram balls, and this is just so, oh, I could cuddle up and go to sleep on it right now. It's such lovely yarn. Again, I think probably I shall be making baby cushions out of this. The colours are a little more muted than the baby blankets versions, but I've got 3 balls all of the same, which is this kind of coral, turquoise and cream with gold and yellow, but very muted tones. And I really like muted tones. And yes, I think probably, given that I have now got 2 babies and a friend's baby is cooking nicely, she's having a little girl, and that will be here sometime early in the new year, which gives me some time to get some things done for her as well. I think I feel some cushions coming on. Not quite sure what cushion pattern to use yet. I have made a couple of stars. In fact, I've made a star for my mother and forgotten to take a picture of it, so I will get my brother to get a picture and hopefully have one to show you at some point. So that's my Bernat baby blanket. My Bernat blanket, rather. It's lovely yarn. Really is lovely. I think it's 100% acrylic. I think. I'm absolutely no idea. I'm 100% polyester. But so soft. It's got that feel. I can't put my finger on what it is. Yes, I can. It's bathrobed, the toweling kind of feel of really luxurious bathrobes. That's what it is. I love it. And one other present I was given is so my Star Wars crochet set. Unfortunately, I was actually given 2 of these. I mean, I'm very pleased with them, and I would never tell the 2 people that I've got a second one. So I'm going to have to think about what I do with the second set. So there is a booklet with the patterns for, I think 16, is it? 12 projects, different amigurumi from the Star Wars universe, and there is a hook and enough yarn to make Yoda and the Stormtrooper. And that's a brilliant idea. There's Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker on the back. So I shall look forward to making those. I've got lots and lots of acrylic yarns. Here we are. Boba Fett, C-3PO, Chewbacca, Darth Vader, Han Solo, Jabba the Hutt, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, R2-D2, Wicket the Ewok, Yoda, and a Stormtrooper. Those are the 12 patterns by Lucy Collin. So yes, as I say, unfortunate I got 2 identical presents, but I've an idea of what I will do with the second one, so watch this space. And then the wonderful, wonderful Wendy gave me 2 cushions she's made out of this fabulous fabric. So the fabric is different beer mats. So these are the mats made by the breweries for putting under a pint of beer or a bottle of beer on a table to avoid the table being stained by the glass. And I love the fact that she's picked up the background colour in a lot of these beer mats and made the piping out of that colour. And they're just so lovely. Sorry, I'm covering my microphone. They are just so lovely. I can't stop touching these. So these are going to live on this sofa in my bedroom. So you will see these in future podcasts because they're just so comfortable. Wonderful. So I got 2 of those. The other one's in the bag still. Bunty's now looking in the bag to see if there's anything in there for her. I've also been given a lovely map book of Oxford through the ages. I love maps. I have always loved maps, and old maps especially, and seeing the changes and seeing what drives the changes in the layouts of cities and the growth of cities and the spread of cities. And I love walking around seeing what were clearly medieval roads within a new modern road layout with new estates or buildings built on them, and working out the changes in the where the roads were to where they are now and why those things have happened. And sometimes it's just down to road safety, but there are occasionally other reasons as well. And I really love walking around towns and just spotting and spying out buildings that have changed use, so coaching inns being one. But I remember walking around Preston when I was working as a parish assistant there in the mid 1990s, and I was walking around there with another monk who didn't know Preston either, and he said, well, let's go and explore the city. And he was a historian, and I love architecture, and we stumbled across it was a shopping centre, a mini mall as it were. But if you actually looked at the carvings and signs on the walls around the outside of this squared building, it was at one point, and initially, a Turkish bath. Turkish baths were apparently very much the vogue in the late 19th century. Obviously, travellers across Europe on the railways that were extending the range of how far people could travel on their grand tours and for holidays and business, and had penetrated as far as the Asia Minor and the Ottoman Empire, as it would have been then. And Turkish baths were very much a thing in the 19th century. So there we are. Who'd have known? They're in the slap bang in the middle of this small provincial city. It was a town at that stage. It's now a city. It became a city, I think, at the millennium. The Queen declared Preston to be a city, gave it a charter. But there we go. It was there was a Turkish bath right in the middle of the town. And it's probable that people who have lived there all their lives, walked past that building, had never noticed that there was a Turkish bath in the middle of their city. But there you go. And I raise this partly because one of my new subscribers, and I should I love my introductions. They're kind of spread out through the whole of the video. Thank you for coming back. Thank you very much to all my subscribers. I've now got over 100 subscribers, which means that I have been able to register a proper channel name as a URL instead of having to use a long string of letters and numbers. So I'm very grateful to all of you who have subscribed, and I'm really very touched and humbled is almost too weak a word. I hope I can continue to live up to your... No, that's not right. You're all very generous. The comments I've received, the private messages I've had have been very, very uplifting and supportive, and I feel quite keenly the positive energy that I'm getting from people from all walks of life and from all over the world. And I'm very grateful, particularly to Claudia of Crochet Luna, for starting that particular ball rolling. And she has continued to be supportive and friendly. I've learned about a whole host of new podcasts, particularly focused on crochet rather than knitting, as a result of Claudia and maybe having my eyes opened a little bit more to the alternatives to the standard knitting podcasts that dominate the fibre arts podcasts. So I don't want to go overboard, but I do find it very... I'm bemused, I guess, that people are interested in what I have to say about what I'm doing and about this little window into my life. And I hope I don't... no, and we'll leave it at that. I'm very grateful to you all, and I'm delighted that you want to spend time with me, and I'd be very happy to provide you with this opportunity to have this little window into my life. So that's my birthday presents, which is all wonderful. The other thing, my brother opened a cupboard. I know this sounds odd. My mother's house it's full of the detritus of 50 years of married life and family life, and there are cupboards and cupboards and cupboards and things everywhere, all tucked away, so it doesn't look particularly... I wouldn't want to have to move house. There's so much stuff that would need to be boxed up and labelled. And it's amazing that we do find these little nooks and crannies in places where you wouldn't think there were nooks and crannies that you can hide away your stash and other things. But my brother opened a cupboard in the dining room and found a huge amount of stash from my mother's fibre arts knitting in particular past. Now, my mother only ever used acrylic yarns. She had a sensitivity to wool, so she couldn't... It wasn't so much that she didn't like it, she couldn't actually tolerate it on her skin. So she couldn't work with it. She could work to an extent with a small amount of wool in a acrylic mix, but generally she steered away from natural fibres. And I think this is an interesting point, actually, that somebody mentioned in one of the comments about the fact that I use and recommend Stylecraft Special. I love Stylecraft Special. I think that the hand-painted luxury yarns are fabulous, and the high natural fibre content of some mass-produced yarns are wonderful as well, and I love using them, and I do use them extensively. But I'm not a yarn snob. I really like acrylic yarns, as long as they're good acrylic yarns or artificial fibre yarns. And I think in this, my mother was very much a creature of her generation. She was born in 1938, so she came of age in the early 1950s. And this, I think it's easy for us to to not really understand the past, even our recent past, properly. In the 1940s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was a huge emphasis on the artificial. The new fibres that meant that clothes could be washed more easily and would retain their colours better and wouldn't need as much ironing and all the other processes that were time consuming. The space age fabrics, as it were. We now see the natural as being preferable and are prepared to pay a premium for it. But there was a time not too long ago when things like Bakelite, nylon, rayon were very much in the vanguard, were very much the vogue of their day. And you were being very forward-thinking and forward-looking and very modern by using these modern fabrics. I mean, G-plan furniture, I don't know if they had a similar thing in the States, but out went all the dark, heavy woods, the oaks, the mahoganies, all the very solid Victorian, hard-wearing furniture. All of that was got rid of in favour of very light woods, very thin woods, very austere lines in furniture, very plain, simple, pared back decoration. And I think we sometimes forget that artificial fibres were a great boon in their day and are very useful, and certainly in terms of making baby clothes, I'm happier using artificial fibres, knowing that if the baby sucks on their clothes, as babies are wont to do, it's highly unlikely that they're going to have any choking hazard, the fibres coming detached and actually swallowing them like a hairball for a cat. And anyone who's seen a cat cough up a hairball knows it's not a pretty sight, and you wouldn't want a baby to be doing that. Which isn't to say that I don't use wool for baby stuff, but I think I've made the point I'm making. So my mother had a huge stash of acrylics, which are going to be very useful for me. So she also had a couple of knitting bags. So there's this lovely tote bag, which I've actually emptied. It's old, but it's rather adorable green teddy bears and wooden handles, and it's a nice big space in there. So that's a very good size project bag for a jumper or something, probably 2 to 3 skein project in there. And she has this lovely little tote bag carry-all with elasticated loops in the 2 end pieces for tools to go into, so that's very useful. And inside she has a collection of minis in quite bright and cheerful colours, which I think this colour is crying out to be C3PO, for example. R2D2, anybody? The blues and the whites, certainly. So, I'm very happy to use acrylic yarns in the projects I do. And I also have a couple of balls of this Aran. I've got 2 balls of this particular Aran, and the great thing about this is that this is the white that and Wendy, this is especially for you, this is the white that I'm using, which is more of a cream, in the Skull and Crossbones Grafgan that I have half finished but not actually finished, which is in danger of becoming a UFO, an unfinished object. And I promise, Wendy, I will get on with the Skull and Crossbones blanket. It will be done. I promise it will. And I've got 2 balls of this now as well, so on top of the one that I already have, which is about half used. So it's quite useful to have the spare in the background. And I got 10 balls of this, bright red. Absolutely no idea what I would be using bright red to make, apart from, of course, the play button cushion. So I suppose I could make a few more of these to give to people. But then the most important thing, oh, and some black, and actually there is one more. I have about 40 balls of this, which again is an acrylic, 100% acrylic. Sorry, no, this is 75-25 acrylic and wool. I see that somebody has accidentally cut some of the fibres, but I will have to re-skein this and discard what I can't use. But there are about 20 balls of this. And it's got these lovely flecks of red and green and the sage green, and it's a dark green, and it's really lovely to look at. So any suggestions on things I could be making, I will gratefully accept. And finally, the other thing that I found was something that I was a bit perturbed, because I only had 3 sets of knitting needles from my mother, and I thought, I'm sure she had a yellow box full of them. I have a yellow box, and it is rammed full of knitting needles. All of them straights. My mother only ever used straight needles. Some of them UK sizes, and some of them in millimeters, because some of them are actually pretty old and predate Britain's membership of the European Union. Some double-ended needles, which I don't think I ever saw my mother using double-ended needles, but I did see her using this, which is her cable needle. Although she often, to be honest, just used a pencil. As long as it was the right size, it didn't matter. And in that, she is absolutely right, of course. As long as it's the right size, it doesn't matter what you use. So there are lots and lots and lots of different, most of them, in fact all of them, I think metal. I don't know if, I don't think bamboo would have been used very much then, and I don't know that wooden needles were much of a feature then anyway, but most of these are either metal or coated metal. But yeah, so I'm really pleased that I've found her knitting needles, and it means that I quite whether it's because I'm a Catholic, whether it's because I'm an historian at heart, I really like tradition. I really like the sense that what I'm doing stands in a line of this being done. I like the idea that spinning is, there are spinning objects from 10,000 years ago, and they're almost identical to the objects that we're using now, that the process is identical, that the intention and the understanding is exactly the same, that we, over 10,000 years, there is nothing new in that sense. And I find all of that across my life. I really enjoy tradition. I love innovation as well. I'm a process knitter when all said and done, process crocheter rather than a product crocheter. I love learning new techniques, and I love applying new techniques in what I'm doing. So I'm not a slave to tradition, but it's probably just a romantic notion, but I find it an attractive romantic notion that what I'm doing is what has been done before. And indeed, the name of this channel, the name that I've chosen for my brand, if you like, is Hand-Me-Downs. And tradition, traditore, comes from the idea of handing on. So it all fits. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased to have found my mother's knitting needles. I'm not going to be a hoarder. I am going to sort these out, and I will talk with my local yarn shop, Masons. They may well, I know they run crochet classes, they may well run knitting classes as well, I don't know if they do, but they may need needles to help people get started, because the more people that can take part in this... Oh, Yes, the more people that can take part in this, the better. A friend at work, a male friend at work, an Asian British male friend at work, came to me last week and said, my daughter has asked me, his daughter is 8, has asked me if I can teach her how to knit. I don't know how to knit. Can you teach me how to knit? So I said, yes. So he brought some wool and it was acrylic, some yarn and some needles. And over the last Thursday last week and Monday and Tuesday this week so far, I've been teaching him how to knit. He's also asked me to teach him how to crochet, which I'm delighted about, and I've actually suggested that he teach his daughter how to crochet first, because I think it was interesting. I've only watched the beginning of their podcast, but Jodie of the Grocery Girls was saying how crochet is still the thing that she really loves. I mean, she loves knitting, but crochet is her thing. She was making some lovely slippers, I think, and I feel the same way. I do have dalliance with other fibre arts, and I will continue to do that because I find that whole thing very exciting, and the challenge is what excites me. But at the end of the day, if push came to shove, if I was asked, what do you love doing? The answer is, without a second's thought, crochet. I am a crocheter. I crochet. I'm a crocheter who also knits and sews and quilts and weaves and spins, but I'm a crocheter at heart. It's what I first experienced. It's what I understand well, best. I like knitting, but crochet, I feel more in tune with the crochet hook than with the needles. I like knitting, and I'm more and more adventurous with the knitting, but I feel more in control with the hook. It makes me happy, and that's not such a bad thing, is it? So, thank you for spending time with me. I think it makes me happy is the sign off for this video. Thank you for spending some time with me. I hope I've not witted away too much. I appreciate that this episode has been a lot about family rather than about knitting and crochet as such. Normal service will be resumed from here on in, but thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share just a little bit of my bigger life outside of the knitting, crocheting, fibre related world. And I don't imagine I'll record on Saturday because it will be too close. So I think it's more or less 10 days since my last video. It will be 10 days until my next video, so I will be recording a week on Saturday and getting back to my weekly schedule. So until then, as I say, thank you very much for the time you spent with me, and stay safe, stay happy, stay well, and enjoy your projects. Bye.